Hi, everybody. Good evening, or good afternoon, or good morning if you're on the West Coast. But in any way, welcome back to our live broadcast class and the Passover Hagada. Yesterday, we arrived at the point where we concluded the section that mentions the covenant between Abraham and God, and the statement that the rabbis who put together the Haggadah says that that covenant between God and Abraham is what stood for us, was there for us at all times, in any time of crisis, when God saved the Jewish people. It's thanks to that covenant. Thanks to that covenant between Abraham and God to make sure that the Jewish people will have final redemption. And we also mentioned that the Haggadah speaks specifically about being enslaved in Egypt, but as we said, the Haggadah also says that in each and every generation there are people trying to extinct us. And every time salvation comes to the Jewish people, the covenant between God and Abraham plays a major role in that redemption, in that salvation. And it's quite interesting to see. I just received today a WhatsApp text. I think Israel is rated number one in the world in the coronavirus handling of the matter. Unbelievable. Number one in the world. And we definitely believe, and we know that it's God's work to make sure that we are as safe as possible. And that land, the land of Israel, is being watched and being guarded. And it's a privilege, but it presents major responsibility. Because when one is granted so much, of a privilege, one must be committed and must understand the responsibility he has or she has to act upon it and behave in a proper way. Now we're going to continue, and now the Haggadah is going to lay out for us how things like happen throughout the generations, from the time of Abraham and all the way through the exile in Egypt, and then when Passover came and the Jews were saved from Egypt. The thing is, and I'm just looking at my phone. One second. I'm sorry, I have to look sometimes. People send me text, and I'll try, I'll put it on a flight mode. But in any way, I have to look at the screen every now and then, because sometimes people, join us or send me a private message and ask questions, so I have to relate to that. So please pardon me as I sometimes look down at the screen. In any way, so now we're going to look at this kind of set of events, or how things happened from the time that God had that covenant with Abraham all through the generations until Passover, until the Jews were redeemed from Egypt. Now the question is, why is this so important? Why not focus on Passover? Just focus on the fact that they were enslaved and on the fact that they were saved, and we're good to go. That's enough. We don't need more than that. Well, it is important because when things happen through time, and between each and every event, many years pass. It seems in most instances that things are happening, we call it naturally, but I mean we would even say maybe like randomly. There is no guiding hand that leads the events in a certain direction. We cannot see it. We cannot see the connection between an event that happened 50 years ago and then something like 40 years ago, then 30 years ago, and today something's happening and we can tie it all up together. In most instances, we don't have that. We can't. Especially if things happened over a much longer period of time. So people who experienced the first incident or event are not there anymore. They passed away. So the connection obviously is not obvious. So it's the rabbis who put together the Haggadah wanted to show us the linkage, to show us that it was all like a stream of events that were pre-coordinated, premeditated. They were prepared along the years, and each and every event that happened was there to answer a certain question or commitment. And at the end of the day, all those events created one long chain of events that connected between the covenant, between the promise, and the result. So we spoke yesterday about the covenant between God and Abraham, and we said that it was important to the rabbis of the Haggadah to mention that Abraham's father was idol worshiper, that Abraham grew up in a house of what we call impurity. It's a spiritual term. And we said that the reason is because it was important to them to show that Abraham didn't get it on a silver platter. He had to work hard for that. And he developed his personality and spirituality and his morals. He worked hard to get to the position where he was. Now the Haggadah will continue, and it tells you like this. Go and study, go and observe what had Lavan HaArami, Lavan the Aramite, who was the father-in-law of Jacob. See what he wanted to do to Jacob, our forefather. Pharaoh, the evil, didn't issue the decree only on the men. When he said you should throw to the Nile all the babies, but all the male babies. Lavan wanted to uproot everything. How do we know that? And it brings a verse from the Torah. It says HaArami, which is how Lavan was called since he came from the land of Aram. So it's called the Aramite. Oved Avi, the one who extincts my father, who demolishes my father. Vayered Mitzrayma, and he went down to Egypt and he lived there as a resident. מלמד שלא ירד להשתקע. He didn't want to, and they teach us that Jacob didn't go to Egypt to settle, only as a temporary resident. And that was said. And they told Pharaoh, we came to live in this land because we don't have grass for the animals that we have. Famine is severe in the land of Canaan. Just let us live temporarily at the land of Goshen. And this paragraph calls for interpretation. How did Lavan the Aramite jump into our story? And what is the connection between Lavan and Pharaoh and the covenant between God and Abraham? And how does that connect to our salvation? And I think, and more than anything else, and how does that affect us today? I mean, we said when we started this class that the messages of the Haggadah, of the book of Passover, of this night that we're going to celebrate, are messages that are relevant not only to us as people, but also to us as individuals, and not only to us as individuals like in the past, in the time of the destruction of the temple or in exile, but even today, and even on our daily routine, okay, in different kinds of aspects. So, what happened with Lavan that he wanted to do, that they called him the one who extincts my father? My father relates to Jacob. Well, Lavan was the father-in-law of Jacob. And Lavan was aware of the spiritual growth of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They were family. Lavan was the brother of Rebekah, the wife of Isaac. He was the uncle of Jacob. They had family ties. And he was aware of the progress and the growth, the spiritual growth that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob achieved when they were in the land of Israel. Now, Lavan comes from the belief in the notion that belongs to, Esau and Ishmael and Nimrod before that, the one who wanted to extinct Abraham. And he is an idol worshiper. He is the one who denies God as the ultimate power in the universe. He denies God sovereignty. He's just like Pharaoh in a sense that I'm as a man, I'm the ultimate power in this world. Just like Terah, father of Abraham. They lived in the same place in different generations, but they lived in the same place. So Lavan's attitude is exactly what Abraham drove off from, escaped from. He was taken by God to the land of Israel to tell him, listen, you're ready to leave. You cannot be in this place anymore. You don't belong here. So when Jacob goes back to Aram in order to find a wife, as his father and mother commanded him, he was going back to the lion's den. He was going back to the same exact place that his grandfather left. He was going to be confronted with notions and perceptions and mindsets of idol worshippers who deny God, who who believe in a different set of morals, who believe in a different way of living, they were like light years away from him. Lavan, as an idol worshiper, as a person denies God, doesn't like the fact that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob have been seeing growth. He doesn't like, because for a person like Lavan, to have God in the world, or to have people, believe in God in the world, that's an obstacle. That's a challenge. And the reason, it's very simple. Why do people, push away God? Well, they might tell you, it's philosophical, this and that. But at the end of the day, bottom line, you cannot prove there is no God. If there was anything we had to do, is to prove that there is a God. But you cannot prove there isn't. It's just impossible. So when people deny God, it's a statement. You cannot prove that. You cannot prove that something doesn't exist. Maybe it exists somewhere else. You cannot prove that. So anytime people deny God, it's not something profound, just a statement that they know that they don't have to back it up in any way. But there is more into it, because if there is a God, and He is the Creator, and He granted us with a set of laws and morals, that means that I must be committed to the one who created me. So I cannot do whatever I want. So what those people do, they push God out of the equation, and once there is no God, well, now I can do whatever I want. I'll give an example. Traffic laws. Traffic laws must be obeyed. You see a sign, whatever it is, you have to obey the law. Now imagine you're driving in the middle of the desert, 2 o'clock at night, nothing like within miles. No cops, nothing. Well, most people will speed. Why? Because once you know the policeman is out of the equation, and there are no cameras and there's nobody, you say, okay, now I can do whatever I want. That's the thing about taking God out of the equation. Once one acknowledges the fact there is a God, one must acknowledge the fact that morals should be of a certain level. So Lavan, just like Nimrod and just like Abraham's father Terah, denied God ideologically. I want to do whatever I want. I want to run my life the way I want. I want to live according to the morals, whichever morals that I have in mind, whatever. So when Jacob started going on with his daughter, he swapped them and he gave him Leah instead of Rachel. He did whatever he wanted to do, because if there is nobody over me to dictate what's right and wrong, I'll do whatever I want. That's Lavan. So he hates the fact that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob see growth. And he would have been very happy if Nimrod, the king of Haran, the king of his land, the city, or whatever state it was successful killing Abraham, but he wasn't. And then he would have been very happy if Ishmael killed Isaac and ended up this building legacy or dynasty. And then he would have been very happy if Esau killed Jacob. End of the dynasty. That's it. Fine. Nothing to worry about. People will not start running around telling people there is a God. They will not start educating people to live according to morals of sorts, that will stop telling people that they have to answer to a higher authority. You can do whatever you want. So if you're powerful, you do whatever you want. If you're a peasant, well, bad for you. He would have loved to see that, but it didn't work. But he was a smart man, and he realized that killing Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob by force, physically, probably not going to work. If Esau didn't succeed killing Jacob, if Ishmael didn't succeed killing Isaac, if Nimrod the king didn't succeed killing Abraham, he figured that probably there is like certain protection on them. More so, maybe something in this method of killing them physically doesn't work. So he figured a different solution. He knew, as I said, he was a very spiritual person. He was aware of what God promised Abraham, and he knew that the construction of the Jewish people as a nation is strongly connected to the land of Israel. And when Jacob came to him to marry his daughter, ended up marrying his two daughters and two slave women who were also his daughters. Well, so when Jacob was at his house, he realized that in order for Jacob to continue building this dynasty of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and the Jewish people, he has to go back to the land of Israel. And had Jacob stayed behind in Haran, the people of Israel would have never come to reality. Lavan knew that. So Lavan decided, instead of trying to kill Jacob physically, he said he thought he would lure him to live in Haran. Show him that Haran is a great place and it's beautiful. You can have a job and a family, and you can be a businessman. You can be very successful. You can still be Jewish. You can do your rituals. You can believe in your God. I'm not telling you not to do that. Why don't you enjoy all the goodness that there is in this land? Why go back? You go into a land where you have like 7 different tribes or nations, and they fight each other and all the good. You don't need that. That was his thing. So when Jacob got up and left without letting him know, he chased him. And when he finally met with him, he said, "Why didn't you let me say goodbye properly? I would have thrown a party, and we would have said goodbye, all the people of the town." What he meant actually was that if Jacob told him he was going to leave, he would have made it for him impossible to leave. When you tell people, "I want to move different town," and they like you, and they start showing you how much they like you, how much you guys are friends and everything, so you end up not leaving. When you realize you live in such a good community and people who love you, you say, it's worth it, I'll stay. That was his idea. But his idea to make Jacob stay in Haran was a death sentence for the entire Jewish people. Entire Jewish people, because the people of Israel would have never come to existence to begin with. Pharaoh, on the other hand, when the Jews were there, he said, all the male babies you should throw to the Nile, not the girls. So Lavan was even worse than Pharaoh. Was even worse than Pharaoh. And the verse tells us here, now how do we know that Yaakov, Jacob, knew that the building of the people of Israel, the creation of the people of Israel must be in the land of Israel? That when he finally goes to Egypt to meet Joseph, and since there was a famine, he goes to Egypt because he needed food. He tells Pharaoh, I didn't come here to acquire citizenship. I don't want to be here a permanent resident. I'm just a temporary resident. Just give me a visitor's visa for whatever period of time. I need food. I have plenty of money. I have no problem with that. We need food for our livestock. We need food for our people. And I'll live somewhere in the outskirts of your country. I'm not going to interfere with anybody. I don't want to be part of anything. I'm a very temporary resident. Why did he say that? He said that because he knew that the creation of the Jewish people as a nation is strongly connected to the land of Israel. And that's what Lavan knew, and that's what Lavan tried to stop from happening. Still, Lavan is called the one who extincts our forefather. But the thing is with Lavan, that ever since Lavan, there was a change or a theme change in anti-Semitism. Yes, the Jews throughout 2,000 years of exile experienced pogroms and massacres and brutality, no doubt about that. But the idea of hugging and kissing and providing Jews with a friendly environment had taken from us far more people than any pogrom and massacre and the Holocaust. More than any of those. And I'm not saying that the non-Jews in the world today are doing it on purpose. Maybe there is one or two. Most of them are not even aware that they are a threat to the existence of the Jewish people. Almost all of them, if you ask them, they don't want to be a threat. They love, she found a nice Jewish guy. She wants to marry the guy. She loves him. She doesn't want to be a threat to the Jewish people. She's willing, to do whatever he wants. But they are a threat because once you marry out, the children will be not Jewish or will not be raised Jewish. And we lost another branch, another tree that's going to go into a whole tree. And a whole Jewish tree is being chopped off before it's even starting to grow. That's the idea of Lavan. That's the concept. He gave the world, if you want to extinct the Jewish people. I'll share with you a story that I once hadn't been, that I was I spoke to those people firsthand. I wouldn't have told them because I wouldn't have believed. But on one of my trips, I was driving in the United States. I was driving, I remember it was between New York and Washington, D.C. It's a long drive. It was many years ago. And normally when I was driving, I would call the phone company. Today we have bundles that you buy and you pay a fixed price for everything. But I don't know, 10, 12 years, 15 years ago, that you pay by the minute. So every time, the phone company will change the terms and the cost, and you want to switch maybe to this program. Anyway, driving for me used to be like a good time to just call them up and straighten out, do some errands. One of the errands I used to do was the phone. So I called the phone company, the cell phone company, and the girl just answers the phone, and I started talking about my plan, my number, whatever it is, and and I took care of whatever I wanted to take care of. In any way, so after we're done, I don't remember how she Yeah. She offered me a plan, and I said that the plan was not good for me because I don't live in the States. I just come there for work, and I come maybe, I don't know, a week to 10 days a month. So whole month program wasn't working for me well. So she asked me where I lived, and I said in Israel. So so I asked her, where do you live? And she said she lived in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I told her that, I've been to many places in the States, but I've never been to Santa Fe, New Mexico. So she said, well, I think you should come and visit. It's a very special city, architecture-wise. We have the greatest food, and we also have the greatest food in America. So I told her, I don't know much about the architecture, but as far as the food, I'm Jewish and I observe the kosher diet laws, so I won't be able to enjoy the food. So I told her, I don't know if you know what kosher food is. And she said, oh, I know. So I said, how do you know? And she says, well, my husband is an Orthodox Jew out of Brooklyn, New York. I said, who are you? And she was Catholic. And she said, she never even converted. And she said, and she started like telling me, I know everything about it. I have in my house, in my kitchen, one cabinet has the dairy dishes, and one cabinet the meat, and one cabinet is parv, and one cabinet is not kosher for me and my children. And he never works on Shabbat. No work on Shabbat whatsoever. On Rosh Hashanah, I made the whole meal for him, the holiday, all the special foods that you have on the table. And she knew everything. She knew everything. She told me like in details that you saw that woman put a lot of attention into those details to please her husband. I don't think they have children, but if they had children, those children wouldn't be Jewish. She's not Jewish. And I know, and she was quite honest, she never meant to be a threat to Judaism. She never wanted to be a threat to him. She wanted to give him the friendliest environment possible so they can live as a couple. But this is exactly what Lavan wanted to do. He told Jacob, why didn't you tell me you were going? I would have thrown you a party. You would have seen how much the people of Haran love you. And then in the party he said, listen, maybe you stay another 6 months. Maybe you, save some more money. Maybe you do this, you do this. And he's going to end up staying more and more. And then the children grow. They go to school. They go to high school. They go to college. And you're already planted. And you're not leaving. That was the idea of Lavan, and it's been working from that time until today. We must be aware of that. We must be aware that it was a premeditated idea. It's not just a coincidence. And the more the environment, or the more Jews get, or any minority group gets, freedom and being accepted as part of the general crowd, the worse it is for Judaism. At the end of the day, nobody wants pogrom. I'm not saying that pogroms and massacres and Holocaust are good for us. No. It's bad. We don't want any violence. But we have to be aware that when it's very comfortable, there is a price that we're paying. And in part, what we do on Passover night and reading the Haggadah and reading the story is to make that issue very much relevant. Make that issue part of Leil HaSeder. Anywhere we do it, so people become aware that intermarriages started like coming there is more and more in Israel, unfortunately. There is a woman in Israel, a daughter of a celebrity that married a very famous celebrity. I don't want to say any names, who's not Jewish. I haven't seen, not even in one media, not a radio, newspaper, nothing, not even one person who said something about the fact that this guy is not Jewish. And it doesn't matter how much he's for Israel, it doesn't matter how much he wants to invest in coming and living in Israel, but at the end of the day, she married out. And nobody says, listen, we're Jews. We're Jews. Our fathers and grandfathers and great-grandfathers and generations over generations carried on their back in blood and sweat and made sure that their children will grow Jewish. And you just giving it away. Just like that. I see a good friend of mine just joined. He works for a Jewish organization. He does an amazing job. I don't want to say any names unless he wants me to. And I once visited him in Europe where he worked. Came to a point that there was a couple that he worked with. He was working for a Jewish organization. And that couple came out of Russia. They were both Jewish. And they never knew they were both Jewish. Being Jewish wasn't even an issue in their household. I mean, religion wasn't even part of their daily talk. Only when the man, after studying with my friend, decided to do Brit Milah, to circumcise, said, I have to ask my wife. I don't know what she's going to say about it. He went to his wife and he found out that his wife was also Jewish. And that's an incident where at the end of the day it was resolved and they were aware of that and became Jewish and everything. But we have millions all over the world that we're losing every day. And it all started with Lavan. And that's the reason Lavan is being called the one who wanted to extinct my father. Unlike Pharaoh, who tried to kill the body, he tried to devastate the Jewish people mentally, spiritually. Lavan wanted really to uproot everything from the very roots of what we are. And Leil Seder and Passover is about bringing that up, living it, making it relevant, very relevant. And now the Haggadah continues. And how, now, when Abraham had the covenant with God, he had no children. And God promised him that he was going to multiply in numbers and he's become great. And as I said, we said yesterday, like the stars in the sky, like, the grains of sand, you cannot even count them. So now the Haggadah, the rabbis of the Haggadah lay out for us this process, how God fulfilled his promise to Abraham. It says, Bimtemeat, just very little, as said that 70 people went, your forefathers went 70 people to Egypt, and now you are like the stars in the sky. Moses, when the people of Israel were about to come to the land of Israel, tells them, God promised Abraham that he's going to multiply numbers. Please remember, Jacob, when he went to Egypt, there were only 70 people in his family. His children, his grandchildren, his daughters-in-law, everybody. And now, when they went to Eretz Israel, and when they get to the land of Israel, they were around 3 million people. So Moses tells the Jewish people, see, started out with just small number, and how God fulfilled his promise to Abraham. You multiplied the numbers. Now you're about to go into the land of Israel. And they were there and became a nation. this verse tells us that they were well established there, meaning even though they came there as temporary residents, they multiplied in numbers. Even though Egypt is not the natural habitat for the Jewish people, God fulfilled his promise to Abraham, and they started multiplying in numbers, in great numbers, just in order to fulfill that promise. Great and huge and vast, as said, and the people of Israel multiplied and swarmed and became great and vast very much, and the land filled them, and they have filled the land. They started with 70 people. So in Egypt, nobody would have paid attention. 70 people in such a great empire. Okay. All of a sudden, the Egyptians go on the street and they see Jewish people. They go to the supermarket and they see Jewish people. They go to the movies and they see Jewish people. They go to the malls and they see Jewish people. All of a sudden, the land became full of them. Well, they were not as great in numbers as the Egyptians, but the fact that it felt as if they kind of filled up the land, that the land became full of them, is a way of realizing the promise that God promised Abraham. And it says, and I've seen you shedding your blood, and I told you, in your blood you shall live, in your blood you shall live. And here it says twice, in your blood you shall live. And what they wanted to say, that when Abraham did the covenant with God, we talked about it yesterday, he split 3 animals. He slaughtered 3 animals, split them in half. So God had 2 major covenants with Abraham. Now why did Abraham did this covenant? Because God promised him many times. We spoke about it yesterday. Abraham insisted there would be a covenant. Why? Because a covenant is not just a regular agreement. An agreement you can open, you say, you can change the terms, reality had changed, we have to work it out. It's been done, in the world of business quite often. A covenant is way more difficult to change or break or back out from. And Abraham insisted God is doing a covenant, just like when God ordered him to do the circumcision, he called it a covenant, meaning it's binding. It's not just an agreement that we do, and that if we do business together, you make money, I make money. A covenant means we are one. So Abraham had 2 covenants that are connected to blood. One is the circumcision. The second is the splitting of the animals, as we said. So God says, and that's a prophet, he says that God, as the Jews were being enslaved in Egypt, he had seen them being tortured, but he remembered the 2 bloods that he had with Abraham, and he said, "B'damayich hayi, with your blood you shall live," meaning thanks to that blood that Abraham had shed, that Abraham had a covenant on, that's what's going to bring you life. That's what's going to bring you redemption. And great in numbers, as said, just like the leaves of the plants in the field, I've made you, and you became great, and you became large in numbers, and you came in herds. The commentaries say that a woman in Egypt, a Jewish woman, bore 6 children in one pregnancy. They became great in numbers. And it says, your breast had grown and your hair has grown but you're still naked. This is metaphorically, and it meant that as far as the body, the people of Israel became a nation, became exactly what God promised Abraham. They became great in numbers as a group of people recognized as one nation. Yet he says you are still naked, and that means what the prophet wants to say, that they were lacking the spiritual content. Like yesterday we said that since they were enslaved and since of the tortures and all the hardship they went through, they they're slowly kind of drifted away from the tradition of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They kind of drifted away from the morals and the spirituality. And we spoke about it was very easy to get drawn into the Egyptian state of mind. So God says, before Passover, before I redeemed you from Egypt, I saw that the body is there, just like I promised Abraham. But the soul was not there. They had no Torah, they had no spirituality, they didn't have you couldn't tell it was like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob philosophy that they lived by. They were enslaved by the Egyptian mentality. That's why they call them naked. You don't really have the proper clothing. You don't have what defines you. Like we go on the street, we see a cop. How do we know he's a cop? Because he has his uniform. You see a soldier, he has his uniform. You go to the hospital and they have the scrubs. You know, this is a nurse, this is a doctor. That's how you know. That's exactly what the verse is saying here. It's saying the body was there, all mature, just like a mature person. But you're still naked. You don't have your uniform. You can't be recognized of what you are because you're missing those uniforms, so to speak, which means the spiritual growth and ultimately the Torah. But the body is there. The process of redeeming the Jewish people from Egypt, the process of fulfilling the commitment to Abraham involved two phases. The body becoming great in numbers and then being taken out of Egypt and qualifying them to be what they're supposed to be. The Jewish people, the Jewish nation, sons of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and ultimately live spiritual life in the land of Israel. And this paragraph ends here by telling us that in that point the body was there, but still they were missing those uniforms. I think that will be it for today. Thank you so much, guys, for participating. For joining me. Would love you guys to participate. I would love you guys to maybe, text me some comments and questions. It'll make maybe the class a little bit more vibrant. Just stay home. Stay safe. I'm very optimistic. I really believe, very soon it's going to end, probably after Passover. But we never know. We have to do the best we can to make sure that when it's over, that we're safe and sound and we can get back to our daily routine. Hopefully, a little bit wiser than what we were before this Corona thing. I'm not saying this class. This class I started out because of the coronavirus, but I don't know whether I'm gonna. I have no idea what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do after Passover, but in any way, we have to make sure that when it's all over and we're back to normal, we say. And I really, the coronavirus makes me think that I don't know what's normal anymore. I don't know. I don't know if normal is what we used to be, running like crazy. That on Motzei Shabbos, my week is already gone because I look at my schedule and it's busy till like next Shabbos, and and we don't have time ever, and we're busy day and night, and all of a sudden, yes, it's tough, and there is the obviously a financial issue, and the country must you know have business and work and grow, obviously. But for me, at least, this coronavirus put a huge question mark in front of what we call our lifestyle. So it got me thinking. In any way, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate that. I really wish you a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful holiday of Passover. I really hope your Seder will be meaningful and fun and exciting. And I hope I'm contributing to that. All the best. I'll see you tomorrow, 8 o'clock. Another class in the Haggadah in English at 7 p.m. in Hebrew, if you want to join me on the Hebrew class. All the best. Have a great, great, great evening.